Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, seventh grade students. We are going to start by labeling our paper today. We are going to label this with today's date, which is May 29th. It's on Friday. Welcome to Friday. We are going to also label our notes. We'll label them two-step equation. And then we can put in parentheses day 1. We'll just call it day 1 of this. We'll start with a reminder about how we solved our one-steps from yesterday. When we solve our one-steps, remember that our goal is to isolate that variable. We want to get that variable all alone. So if you look right here, if you look at what I'm going to highlight, we're subtracting 14. So what we want to do is the opposite of that. We want to add 14. Oops, let me change to a pen. We're going to add 14. And what that does is that makes it 0 right here. And what we're left with is negative x, or the opposite of x equals negative 20 plus 14 is negative 6. Now this is a great answer, but we want x completely alone. So really what we're saying is if the opposite of x is negative 6, then x would equal 6. The math that's actually involved with that right there is you are dividing by negative 1, which cancels the negative, divide by negative 1, which makes it a positive 6. For problem number 2, what you can do is you can actually do 2 steps at once. You can get rid of the dividing by 6 and the negative at the same time. You can do that by doing the opposite of dividing. Pause for just a minute and think, what's the opposite of dividing? Multiply. So we're going to multiply by negative 6 here. That means the 6's and the negatives cross off. Multiply by negative 6 here. This is where it's nice to go quick and use our calculator. So we're going to do 13 times negative 6, and our y equals negative 78. For this one, the reason why this one works, if we plug our number back in, the opposite of negative 78 divided by 6 is the opposite of negative 13. Well, the opposite of negative 13 certainly equals 13. So we can always check our answers. Now here's what we're going to be doing today. Today, unfortunately, you are not going to be learning a mental math skill. You have to learn the process for solving two-step equations. Step number 1 says we need to do our reverse order of operations. So think about order of operations as PEMDAS, or GEMDAS if you're thinking of grouping symbols, and we have to work backwards. The big idea is you look at what is closest to the variable, which is the 2x. That has to be separated last. So you can still do the railroad tracks thing. I like to just do one line just to keep that balance. And we're going to start by dealing with that adding 4. We're going to zero adding 4 out, and we're going to subtract 4 and subtract 4. When we draw our line under it, adding 4 and subtracting 4 zeroes out. 16 minus 4 is 12, and what we have down here is that first step done, subtracting 4 from both sides. Now you can think, okay, now I have to separate that x. Now I have to separate that 2 from that x, and that 2 is currently being multiplied. We are going to divide by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1, or you can think of it as just canceling out. 12 divided by 2 results in our solution as x equals 6. Remember, we write that as our complete sentence. And if we substituted that 6 back in to see what that equals, we would end up with 2 times 6, which is 12, plus 4. We have to think, does that equal 16? And it does. Let's take a look at a few of these. Now again, remember to be careful with negatives and always double check your answers on a calculator. We're going to start. I always start by finding my equal sign and drawing that line down. I can do that on both A and B. Now look again, and you want to see whatever is closest to or connected to H, that has to be dealt with last. So that negative 3H and that 9Y, we're going to deal with that last. So we're going to move away everything else. We're going to balance that equation. We're going to do the opposite of adding 8, which is subtracting 8. Positive 8, negative 8, 0 out, but whatever we do to this side, we have to do to this side. Now here's where you really want to double check your answers. We still have the negative 3H. We haven't done anything with that yet. And the negative 13 minus 8, if you are not solid with your integer skills, grab a calculator. You should get negative 21. Now again, that's not our final solution because what we have is we have the negative 3 that's being multiplied. So we have to separate those now. We're going to now divide by negative 3. Negative 3 divided by negative 3 is 1 or cancels out. Divide by negative 3 and H equals negative divided by a negative is a positive 7. For B, we are going to look again and we are going to get rid of that minus 7. You can think of it as minus 7, so we'll add 7. Or you can think of it as negative 7, which to get it to 0, we put a positive 7 with it. Either way, it does the same thing. So what that does is zeroes it out from here, and we have our multiplication, 9y, 9 times y equals whatever 56 plus 7 is. That works out to be 63. Again, our last step is to separate that piece that's closest to the variable, and we do that by dividing 9. 9 divided by 9 is 1, where it cancels out. Divide by 9, and our solution is y equals 7. All right, take a minute, copy these problems down. Now, of course, there's always a few extra challenges in 7th grade because we have those negatives that we have to be careful of. We also have to pay attention to two signs that are together. So what we're going to look at first, if it helps, you can definitely start by by highlighting where that variable is and what it's attached to at this moment. But then what we have to do is we have to go back and we have to look and we have to say, hey, wait a minute, we have a plus sign and a minus sign. What do those two together change to? We're going to keep that 4x, but this plus sign and minus sign become minus 3. So this is the same problem. 4x plus negative 3 is the same as 4x minus 3. Now we're ready to solve. We can keep that 4x, highlighted, and we can get rid of our minus or subtracting 3. The opposite of subtracting 3 is adding 3. We add 3 to one side. We have to do the same to the other. This zeroes out. I still have my 4x, and that now equals 25 plus 3 is 28. Divide by 4. And our final solution is x equals 7. Technically, because we had that first step of combining our signs, you could call that a 3-step equation, which means at this point, you're pretty much a professional. All right, same idea over here for D. First thing we want to do is we want to go back to trimester 1 of our learning, and if you see a subtraction sign next to a negative, we're going to circle and rewrite that. That is going to become plus 6. Everything else can stay the same. We can still have this negative 5y, and we can still have negative 39. We're going to, I did it again. Dig nabbit. We are going to highlight that 5y. And again, now we start our reverse order of operations. If you see adding 6, the opposite of that is subtracting 6. And subtracting 6. This zeroes out. We have negative 5y equals whatever negative 39 minus 6 is. Always double check if you're not confident with your integers. That is negative 45. Again, be very careful with negatives. We're now going to separate the negative 5 from the y, and since right now it's being multiplied, we're going to divide by negative 5, divide by negative 5. Our final solution is y equals negative divided by negative, positive 9. Just 3 examples left. These ones are a little bit trickier only because you have to really be careful as to what is attached to the y. So let's start. There's my equal sign. I'm going to draw that line, remembering that with that line, whatever I do on one side, I do the same to the other. Now be extra careful. If you look at this first one, we don't just have a 2 attached to the x. This negative sign belongs to it also. So this negative sign is negative 2x. What you want to recognize is that 10 that's in front is a positive 10. How do we zero out a positive 10? We subtract 10. Subtract 10 is 0. Subtract 10 leaves us with this negative 2x equals negative 21. Now we have to divide by a negative. Divide by negative 2. What we get for our solution is x equals positive 10.5. If you want to know if you did this right, you go right ahead and you fill in your number. You do 10 minus 2 times 10.5. You want to see if that equals negative 11. Now, if you have a calculator like we use in school, you can type in everything that I have underlined right here all at once. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do 2 times 10.5, and I get 10 minus 21, and I'm going to see if that equals negative 11. Again, type that in. It does. So again, recognize for question F that what you have is you have not just a 7 attached to the y with multiplication, but you have negative 7. So if we look now and we draw our line, we have to get rid of that 2.3. Well, that 2.3 is positive, so we're going to subtract 2.3. Subtract 2.3. I'm really glad here that we can use our calculators. It just makes it go a little quicker. Negative 1.9 minus 2.3, and we get negative 4.2. Now again, notice what I did here is I kept this negative sign. The subtraction sign belongs to that 7, so I kept that subtraction sign with the 7, which now makes it negative 7. They multiply, you divide. Divide by negative 7, divide by negative 7. Luckily, again, you can use your calculator. This becomes 1 or cancels out, and you get y equals 0.6. All right, last problem of the day is a real-life problem. We're going to read through this and highlight the important information. It says, at a theater, the tickets were $9.75 each, and you had a $5 off coupon. Write an equation to represent you having to spend $73. Now, the big thing to remember is that your equation must follow the actual story and what happened. So what we're going to do is we're going to start at the beginning. It says you're at the theater, tickets were $9.75 each. So that's $9.75 per ticket. Now you had a $5 off coupon. So when you have it off, you're going to subtract your $5. What that equals is that equals the total that you spent. And you spent 73. So that tells the story in an equation. Now what we get to do is we get to solve. Just like our previous problems, if they subtract 5, we're going to add 5. Add 5. And we get $9.75 per ticket. And before that $5 off coupon, it was $78. We now divide by $9.75. So when you do 78 divided by 975, what you get for your solution is you get 8. So you bought 8 tickets.